Our presenter today is John Pope, and John is a senior communications associate in Rethink Media's Peace and Security Collaborative, where he works with leading experts, organizations, and community advocates on the intersection between national security, politics, and the media. John primarily works on the issue of nuclear disarmament and nonproliferation, as well as the Pentagon budget. And before working with Rethink, John used storytelling and communication tools in a variety of government, nonprofits, and political campaign roles. He worked as a field organizer back home in Pennsylvania for the 2018 midterms, managed the communications and fundraising for the Natick Language and Culture Institute while living in Mexico, and empowered local peace builders around the world with technology tools at the Peace Tech Lab. And I'm happy to be joining him as a facilitator today. We will have John present first, and then we will run through a few breakout sessions and have some question and answer, maybe in the opposite order. When we get to the question and answer period, I will repeat this later, but we will have you, if you have a question, use the chat tool below, and you're going to type the word question in all caps, and then I will call upon you, and the people who are running this behind the scenes will unmute you in order to have you speak. We'll repeat that later, but take it away, John. Thanks.
So we're going to do a session today on social media. Really excited that you all decided to join, and that we've had such a great event so far with the panel discussion. As Anna said, that my name is John. I work at Rethink Media. And what I really want to talk to you guys today about is not social media, tactics. There are so many different social media platforms out there that we could spend 45 minutes probably just listing them. So we won't be able to get into details about each and every one today, but we're going to instead kind of take a step back and kind of think about strategy around social media. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you all about. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to ground us in some shared baseline assumptions, baseline agreements. Because you all joined this session, I'm pretty confident in saying that everyone here believes social media is important or could be important for their organization or themselves, or just in general, the disarmament and abolition work that you're doing. And the data backs you guys up. I'll show you guys if we manage to get the slides up, but basically I have a poll from Pew Research that says about a quarter of the American people admit to having some political view they hold or some social view they hold changed by social media in the last year. And that's about a 10% growth from even 2 or 3 years ago now. That maybe doesn't sound like a big number to everyone, but if you look at comparative data for other types of media, that's actually really good. And if you think about it a little bit more, that's what people are admitting to a pollster. Pollsters also do this type of stuff and ask about advertising, and it's pretty infamous that no one thinks advertising works on them. But then when you do kind of blind studies or things where you're not just asking a yes or no question, it's pretty obvious that advertising does work on people. So I think even with a baseline of about 25%, we can say that there's a much higher group of people who are affected by what they read and what they see on social media. So that means social media is a great tool for changing public opinion and engaging people writ large, but it can go a lot further than that as well. We are increasingly seeing various politicians and policymakers using social media, and it's not just that their staffs are managing it to kind of broadcast stuff out, but they're increasingly using social media to listen and to pull information in. And it's influencing their views, and it's a good way to reach them, even if you can't go sit in their office and lobby them directly, especially now during the pandemic. Beyond the policy side, the media is also all over social media as well, and not just in a broadcast way, but in a listening way. This is especially true with journalists, and especially true on Twitter. They constantly find new stories, get quotes, get connected to experts or activists through the social media platforms themselves. And you want to make sure you're there if you're trying to raise your profile with that particular group. And then the kind of last important thing is that social media is a really powerful advocacy tool. Even if you're not trying to reach out and bring in new people or change people's minds, you can use social media for organizing. I know last summer during the Black Lives Matter protests, the way I was staying up to date about what was happening in my local community was through Instagram, through direct message groups, even on Twitter and other social media platforms. Like, a lot of people have pioneered not just the kind of slacktivism that you've probably heard the term before of like this post, but actually getting people out to the streets, to congressional offices, to change their buying behavior, all those types of things we do around advocacy. They've also turned social media into a pretty good fundraising tool. So there's all sorts of reasons why social media can be important for you, for your organization, for the policies you work on. And I want that to be kind of our baseline assumption. But I think where we kind of hurt ourselves and where we get hung up is that we don't figure out how to take advantage of that. So I just got a notification. I think I should be able to share my screen now. Let me give it a try. All right, so I just talked to you guys about that, why social media is important. And now I want to show you kind of where we mess up.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I have an idea for our next social media campaign. Oh, cool. What is a viral video? Viral video. Oh, that's it. So you can't really make a viral video? Yes, you can. I see them all the time. What I mean to say is it's super cool when a video goes viral, but making a viral video isn't really a strategy, and it's not a good goal for a campaign but I want a viral video. What would this video be about, though? What would it be promoting? It would be a viral video. Okay, but what's its purpose? Its purpose is being a viral video. Viral video. Cool. Guess I'm gonna go start brainstorming some viral videos. It's gonna be great. We're going viral. Yeah, viral.
Okay, so that video is obviously meant to be funny, but it really hits on a key point that we sometimes get so caught up in the idea of, doing the thing, like being on social media, being present, that we forget to think about strategy. And, I think this video is also another good example of a key social media lesson. If any consultant or, ad agency or whatever tries to, sell you that they're going to make you go viral, you should probably run away, because that's not a promise they can necessarily keep. So what we're going to talk about is strategy. Here are kind of the 5 steps we like to talk about at Rethink for developing your strategy. And this works great for social media, but it can kind of generally work for any type of communication outreach. The first is you want to set a goal. So you have to begin with the end in mind. And then from your goal, you're going to build out to an audience and kind of figure out who will help you achieve that goal. Then you're going to learn about that audience. You're going to listen and engage with them. And then you start making your plan because you've done all that front end research. And then finally, you start posting and start engaging on the platform. So I'm going to go into each of these steps now in a little more detail. All right, so the goal. Goals can be, kind of anything. I think we're all working to end nuclear weapons. I would stay away from goals that are kind of that big. Like, you want to be a little more specific and a little more achievable, right? So maybe your goal is to raise the profile of this issue in your local paper. So your goal is to, get local journalists paying attention to this. Or maybe it's to get your congressman to co-sponsor a bill related to a nuclear weapons issue. Or maybe it's just to raise money. Once you kind of narrow that down, you can kind of figure out who your target is. And I kind of said it as I was describing those goals, right? Working to get local journalists to cover this. The goal is coverage, but the target is the journalists. Getting your congressman to co-sponsor something. The goal is the legislation, but the target is the congressman. Fundraising, the target is the people you're trying to raise money from. And where this is kind of tricky is that your target in your audience can sometimes be different. So if your target is a congressman, you can spend a bunch of time like trying to figure out their social media patterns and posting very specific to their schedule and stuff, and that's great. But you're actually really trying to influence their voters, and that will in turn influence the congressman. So audience is just trying to think about who communication can actually help you reach. If it's just your city council member or your congressman or something, lobbying meetings are great. But like when you're doing media work, you're doing communications work, you're really thinking about their voters. So, sometimes these are the same thing. Like if it's fundraising, your target and your audience are the same. We just try to make people remember that there can be a distinction there. And then once you have that, you can really start building out into tactics. So let's jump a little more into audience. So I've got 2 pictures here, and there's really 3 different audiences being shown. On the left, we've got a group of veterans greeting some active duty soldiers as they're returning home. That's 2 groups, right? Veterans, they're a little older, looks like maybe Vietnam veterans. These guys who are younger are, serving in Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, you can kind of visually tell like the newer active duty soldiers are a lot more diverse than the older veterans. Looking at this other picture, these are a bunch of Sunrise Movement protesters in a congressional office lobbying for the Green New Deal. They're even younger than those active duty soldiers. They're, high school age. These audiences are perhaps gonna all be important for the goal you're working on, and you can try to target different audiences, but you realize that you're gonna have different paths to get to them. On social media, that often literally means different platforms. This is just a webcomic that was only looking at different ways to chat and message people on social media. This is like a year or 2 old now. Some of those apps don't exist anymore. There's some new ones that do exist now. There's also a bunch of audio apps and video apps that aren't even listed. You don't have to like memorize the screen or try to know about each of them. It's just to show that different people are on different platforms. So we should really be saying like social medias, not just social media, because where you go and what you spend time on really derives from your audience. Beyond the technical side, audiences, also have to be communicated to, not just at. By that, I mean, you really want to focus on what they care about and what their values are. This is a great quote we like to use in a lot of our trainings. We do not find policies worth debating if they don't touch on the emotional implications for ourselves, our families, or the things we hold dear. Any kind of policy work you're doing, advocacy work you're doing, organizing work you're doing is really about getting someone convinced that you and them share the same values, and that whatever action you're advocating for or policy you're advocating for is about expressing those shared values. So if you spend some time thinking about who the audience is, what their values are, where that overlaps with you, with your organization, then you can really start making content that's going to mobilize people and it's going to move people. And that's regardless of whatever social media platform you're using. All right, so that kind of gets us to the listen and engage part. Like, it's great to say, oh, you should, figure out what your audience's values are, but how do you actually do it? And luckily, social media is really helpful for that. Because these platforms are public, because people are, out there living their normal life, you can become a user on Twitter, or on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can just start following some people, and you can basically get like a live focus group without having to spend thousands of dollars to hire some company to help you do focus groups. You can start asking yourself and answering some questions of like, where is my audience? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Instagram? You can start asking, how are they communicating? Is there a tone? Is there a style? Are there specific people that, they seem to pay attention to, like celebrities or news channels or other sorts of messengers? Is there a time of day that they're spending, more time on the web than, are they like morning people or afternoon people, like that kind of stuff, right? And then you can also start looking for who to imitate. So not just messengers that are influential of that group, but organizations that you admire and that have done good work on this issue and that are getting traction with those audiences that you can start copying. All right. So this, again, is pretty easy on social media because the platforms set themselves up for listening. Twitter's a great example. You can build out Twitter list and, just kind of target yourself and, figure out who are the 10 people that represent the audience I want to find, and, just follow them. It's not invasive, right? This is all public platforms, and you can find this stuff out pretty easily. This isn't like me giving you a research assignment for, a year. It's just, spend like a week or so kind of being a member of the platform, a user of the social media platform before you start trying to make your plan, because you'll learn so much in that time. And there's also, you can just Google tons of resources, online, free and readily available, where people have done this in a much more, scientific demographic research type of way. Social Media Today is a website I look at all the time that kind of is constantly saying, like, how does Generation Z use Facebook? Like, all that kind of stuff is out there. So I'm not going to spend as much time on it now. All right, so you've set your goal, you've figured out who your audience is to achieve that goal, you've started learning about that audience, and now you can actually make a plan. And this is kind of what it ends up looking like in actuality, right? If your goal was to capture the attention of local officials, you could figure out that maybe I'll hold a Twitter town hall with local journalists that'll get people paying attention, because you've identified that people in your town pay attention to that particular journalist. Or you're collecting signatures on a petition. You could use Facebook and Facebook advertising to kind of target the demographic that you care about to really drive interest to that petition. So there's a million different ways you could do this. I just wanted to give some examples so it felt a little more concrete. The other thing I really want people to think about while they're making the plan is that social media feels very fast, and it is. It's a platform that's constantly updating and changing, and people are responding instantly, and stuff disappears into the ether. But you don't want your plan to be too fast. You have to give stuff some time to work. So, if you actually sit out and plan ahead for a couple weeks, for a month, and, commit to it, you're going to have a lot more success than if you post something and it, only gets 1 or 2 likes, and you say, oh, I've got to try a whole new different strategy, and you do something completely different the next day, and it still only gets 1 or 2 likes. If you keep whiplashing back and forth like that, you're just going to get yourself frustrated. You want to be able to adjust, but you want to give yourself enough runway for things to actually begin working. And that kind of gets us to the post and reflect part. So, this is probably where most of us think about spending our time on social media, not those first 4 steps. But I think those first 4 steps are going to make you much more successful here. So eventually you are going to use your plan to start putting content out on social media. And the really cool part is that you get all this data back. I've written a lot of op-eds and LTEs and help people place them, and they're really impactful. There's good research showing that you should do it, but it's really hard to know as the advocate who actually read it and like how people actually responded, right? Like the news outlet you work with isn't going to give you that data, but on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, you and your organization can get all of that data for free. And if you want to put money into it, there's all sorts of tools and companies that can help you even get more data and more analysis for just a little bit more money. So you get on the platforms, you start posting stuff, you give yourself a little bit of time for it to work, and then you can start making little adjustments here and there. You can realize, oh, people aren't really paying attention to what I post in the morning, so I'll start shifting my content to the afternoon. It's that live feedback loop that makes social media such a really cool tool to use in communications. So to review, we've got kind of our 5 steps to building a strategy. You're setting a goal, you're figuring out what audience you need to reach to achieve that goal. You're spending some time learning and researching that audience, listening to them, engaging with them, seeing how they use the platforms and what platforms they use. Then you're making a plan based on what you've learned. You're giving yourself some time to kind of execute the plan and see what works. And then finally, you're posting, right? We're not just jumping to doing the thing, to making the viral video. We're we're doing all that prep work so that when we do it, we're going to get the most value out of the time we'll spend on the platform. Because the other thing about these social media platforms is that they can suck up a ton of your time, either as a user or as an organization. So you want to make sure that you've actually thought through it. All right, so I want to jump now and do an activity. Basically, have you guys go through these 5 steps. You can make up a fake campaign that you're working on or concentrate on something that's immediately pressing. You can do it for your organization. You can do it for you as an individual. Totally fine to be, I want my goal to be better seen as an expert on nuclear weapons. And we're gonna go into breakout rooms and, say we'll spend about 10 minutes in breakouts, spend the first 5 kind of filling out the worksheet, and then spend the next 5 working with your partner to see what they did, give each other some feedback, talked about what worked, what didn't work.
Now that we have people back from their breakout rooms, I'll just repeat the process here. So if you have a question, you'll type the word question, hopefully in all caps, that would be easier, into the chat box. You should see the little chat box at the bottom. And once you do that, we'll call on your name. We'll call your name and then John will answer your question. You can ask your question and then John will answer your question. And if we don't get to everybody today, that's okay. We will make sure we'll get back to you because we have your question typed and we'll have the word question from you typed into the box and we have your contact information. Okay. Are there any questions? If you could type the word question in if you have a question, then we can call upon you one at a time. Okay, it looks like Intan Badisa has a question.
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so John, actually my question is, this is based on my observation from where I come from. So I come from Indonesia where social media users are massive. And I'm aware that you mentioned about getting a viral video is not a solution, but the condition in Indonesia is sometimes it helps to make something viral, to move people to do something that we are persuading through the social media. So my question is, what's the standard until our social media movement is actually like properly moved people? And also another question is how, this is very technical, how to make the social media that we just built, for example, Instagram account, we just signed up for it, for a movement or for a community. And especially for this such heavy issue like nuclear disarmament, not many people may be aware about it or maybe care about it, but how to generate that account from 0 followers to get like many followers. Is there any timeline, like proper timeline that we need to be patient of? We cannot get 0 to 1,000 or to 10,000 in a minute. We can't. But what do you think about the timeline that we should be patient about to develop that social media?
Thank you.
So your first question, the kind of viral video thing we looked at earlier. The idea there is not that we don't want stuff to go viral. It's that we want to make content that is fundamentally good on its own and, is advancing our causes and will be, convincing and valuable, even if it only gets 10 views versus 10,000 or 10 million views. Because if you start with good content, that's going to help you steadily grow followers in the long term, and it's going to set you up for success to have something go viral. The network mechanics of something going viral, it's all about like influencers from different parts, different nodes of social networks, like picking it up and kind of spreading that way. And it's like kind of hard to control. You can, do some behind the scenes outreach and almost like you would, try to get a celebrity to endorse a campaign or sign on to something. And like you ask like, hey, can you share this on your social media platform? And like that starts to help with virality. But it's the idea is just don't begin with being viral as the end goal, because you're often not going to achieve it. Begin with wanting to create good content and focusing, like you said in your second question, on building those followers. Because you'll often see people will have, something that goes viral and they only pick up a few people from it afterwards. And then they wonder like, why didn't I get more out of it? It's because, people saw the viral thing and then they looked at the rest of your page and they said, oh, well, the rest of this isn't very good. So then they don't bother following you. So you want to consistently have good things so that when you have an amazing opportunity like going viral, you can take advantage of it. And then the timeline, I can't necessarily give you an exact timeline, but you want to think of it almost as like a curve, right? Like these things snowball. It's probably going to take you longer to get from 100 to 200 followers than it'll take you to get from 200 to 300 followers. The only time you really want to start worrying is when you flatten out and you level out. That's when you want to go back and figure out, what am I doing that's preventing me from continuing to grow?
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If there's a question, you need to type it into the chat box. We don't see any other questions at the moment.
Oh, I got one. I think they private chatted it by mistake.
Okay.
So the question is, could Anne Fersh post her Rotary website? Rotarians are in the mini communities. So yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention and haven't yet. Social media is all about social. The best thing we can do is promote each other's content and amplify each other. Like that's, the easiest thing we can control in making stuff go out. So, please, everyone share your links in the chat right now, email each other, join Facebook groups, Twitter DM groups, Slack communities, where when you create content, you then push it out to all of our allies in the space and get them to share it. Because, my personal Facebook network is different than your personal Facebook network. It's different than my mom's. It's different than my work colleagues. So if we really, focus on promoting each other's stuff, we'll start, inch by inch growing towards that virality.
Great. John, we are restricted to private chatting. If people have a question, you have to chat me directly. It's Anna Baker. And the workshop is supposed to end in 1 minute. Do you want to continue for 2 minutes, John, or would you like to wrap this up?
I'm happy to keep going if we have time to squeeze in a question. What I am going to do, and I think this should go to everybody, is I'm just going to throw this tip sheet in the chat that is a little bit more about the specifics and the tactical side, because I know I was mostly talking about strategy today, and a lot of the time you're going to be much more worried about the tactics. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm trying to remember that sheet has our website on it, and there should be an about or an info email. So feel free to reach out. I think my email might be even on there. So feel free to reach out if you want to get a hold of us and follow up on this conversation.
Excellent. If there are no other questions, let's see, there is one other question. Felipe?
Yes, thank you. John, I would like to ask you, you mentioned at some point that content quality and strategy are more important than being present on social media in a way. I would like to ask you, how constant do you believe that posting needs to be in order to sustain a page's following, for example, on Instagram?
Yeah, it varies a lot by platform. On Twitter, I would say, you're posting a dozen times a day. On Facebook, maybe, I think it's 2 or 1 or 2 is about the standard now. Instagram, you don't necessarily have to be every day to work in the algorithm, because it's tilted a bit more towards what people engage with rather than how consistently you post. Lots of good tips online, because the algorithms are always changing, about how to adapt your posting schedule. Social media today is a great place to start with that. Social Movement Technologies is also a really good website that has that kind of information.
Great. And let's see, are there other questions? I just put John's contact information into the chat box. It says the social media worksheet does not have contact information, but I put it, it's in there now. Are there other questions? Let's see. Dr. Michael Orgel on Twitter, don't bank on the bomb on Twitter. Those are 2 suggestions. Any other questions for us? If not, I think we'll close the workshop at this point and you can head to the next one. Okay, thank you, John. Thanks everybody for joining. And let's keep active online so we can continue engaging and continuing pushing this movement where it needs to go.
Yeah, great talking.